When Jesus had crossed in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered round him, and he stayed by the lakeside. Then one of the synagogue officials, Jairus by name, and seeing him, fell at his feet and pleaded with him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is desperately sick. Do come and lay your hands on her to make her better and save her life." Jesus went with him, and a large crowd followed him. They were all pressing round him. Now, there was a woman who had suffered from a hemorrhage for 12 years. After long and painful treatment under various doctors, she'd spent all she had without being any the better for it. In fact, she was getting worse. She'd heard about Jesus, and she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his cloak. "If I can touch even his clothes," she told herself, "I shall be well again." And the source of the bleeding dried up instantly. And she felt in herself that she was cured of her complaint. Immediately aware that power had gone out from him, Jesus turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples said to him, "You see how the crowd is pressing round you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" But he continued to look around to see who had done it. Then the woman came forward, frightened and trembling because she knew what had happened to her. And she fell at his feet and told him the whole truth. "My daughter," he said, "your faith has restored you to health. Go in peace and be free from your complaint." While he was still speaking, some people arrived from the house of the synagogue official to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why put the master to any further trouble?" But Jesus had overheard this remark of theirs, and he said to the official, "Don't be afraid, only have faith." And he allowed no one to go with him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. So they came to the official's house, and Jesus noticed all the commotion, with people weeping and wailing unrestrainedly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and crying? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. So he turned them all out, and taking with him the child's father and mother and his own companions, he went into the place where the child lay. And taking the child by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I tell you to get up." The little girl got up at once and began to walk about, for she was 12 years old. At this, they were overcome with astonishment, and he ordered them strictly not to let anyone know about it, and told them to give them something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus.
The year was 21 AD. It was a good year in lots of ways. Jesus had just celebrated his 21st birthday. And because Jairus and his wife had welcomed into the world their daughter, who had just been born. And this unnamed woman in the Gospel began hemorrhaging. All at that same time, that same year. And now in the Gospel we move forward 12 years. It's now 33 AD, and this patient synagogue official asked Jesus to help his daughter. She's not well. And we can't blame the internet for that. She was ill for some reason, we don't know what it was. But Jairus has to wait because this woman who's been hemorrhaging for the last 12 years interrupts Jesus. So we're setting the context of what's happening. This woman is persevering in her faith, and nothing's going to stop her touching Jesus' clothes, because that will be enough for her to be healed. She's had 12 years of being socially excluded because of the hemorrhaging complaint and the difficulty and the problems that the Jewish people had with blood and all that ritual impurity, all that sort of stuff. She's reintroduced by Jesus to society. She is resurrected into that community. The question we often ask, why must our loved ones die? Well, the fact is, every one of us is going to die. I'm reminded of the Redemptorist missionary who came into the parish and said, everyone in this parish is going to die. And the man in the front seat started laughing. And the missionary said, why are you laughing? He said, well, two reasons. One, I'm not from this parish. And two, I'm not going to die, I'm going tomorrow. I booked for the train tomorrow. Anyway, we say things when people die. We try to sort of comfort and console one another. And we say things like, oh, it was God's will, or he needed another angel in heaven, or all those sorts of, well, that's rubbish. It's not clearly any help whatsoever. In fact, that first reading from the Book of Wisdom, death is not God's doing. Death and decay are not the way God has planned. God has made us for eternal life. He's the giver of life. Everything about God is about life-giving. So death is not of God's making. We're created to live with God forever. But if we don't see that in a context, then we might miss the important learnings here. I mean, death and taxes are inevitable, that's true. Death is Satan's work, according to the Book of Wisdom. By raising Jesus from the dead, God has told us physical death is not the end. It's not. And if we see our lives in that context, then things change. This young girl was 12 years old. And we think just at the beginning of life, all that could have been. And Jesus says, no, life is what we're about. Life here, yes, but eternal life, even more important. When everyone says your daughter's dead, Jesus says, no, that's not true. Continue having faith. When we see our loved ones pass from this life, it's not the end. In the creed, we will say, I believe in the resurrection of the body and life everlasting. The resurrection of the body means that we get our bodies back, that our friends will recognize us and see us and know us, and we them. And eternal life means forever. That's a very long time. We might say, where was Jesus when my child died? Well, he's there. He's with us. Always. Sacramentally, all of us are raised to life. So in this gospel, when Jesus says, she's not dead, she's asleep, he could be speaking for every one of our loved ones who has passed. Because they are alive. Just not here with us, but we will see them again. We will recognize them. We will be with them for eternity. That's a much more comforting and consoling thought than some of the euphemisms that people might say that really
of the body.